We begin in East London, where our reporter Bulelani Phillip is to give us a sense of what is going on there. Jola.
Actually been quite a busy day for the IEC here in the Eastern Cape. We are coming to you live from the Results Operations Center, which is situated at the East London International Convention Center. Well, things did not go quite smoothly for at least 22 voting stations this morning, as they were disrupted by some community protests in areas such as Port St. John's, Ngobo, Makana and Winnie Madikizela Mandela municipalities. Of course, just a short while ago, we've also seen some reports that the DA Federal Council Chair, Helen Zille, was also escorted out of a voting station in Nelson Mandela Bay municipality, allegedly for campaigning inside a voting station, an accusation that she denies. But all in all, the 22 voting stations that were disrupted did manage to actually open a bit later after the intervention of law enforcement agencies. One of the incidents that has had an ire on many people's minds is what they did in Winnie Madikizela Mandela municipality, where actually IEC officials were locked inside the voting station and they had to be freed by police by cutting chains as well as padlocks that had locked them in. So all in all, Vuyo, all the 4,809 voting stations had resumed their operations by lunchtime. And of course, with just about 3 hours left for the voting process, we are quite confident that come 9 p.m. all those voting stations will be closed and that the counting will begin right here in this Results Operations Center. Vuyo?
Bulelani, just before I let you go, I mean, this battle is going to be won and lost in the metros, and where you are you are, of course, at the Buffalo City metro, where it's widely expected that the ANC will win, certainly from the polls and everything that went into this election. Did voters turn out in big numbers in the areas around East London, King Williamstown?
Vuyo, that's quite a interesting question that you raise, and it's actually probably going to be one of the factors that will determine how political parties win these elections, particularly the ANC. At least according to the IEC, by 1:30 this afternoon, the voter turnout in the province had been about 13.5%. Actually a far cry compared to that time when you juxtapose it to the 2016 election. There's been quite a low voter turnout, actually a very low voter turnout in the province, and of course there's quite a lot of disillusionment amongst some voters, and others actually are disillusioned around the issues of service delivery, whilst also there's still the ongoing battles within the ANC about some communities not accepting some of the candidates that are on the ballot paper. Hence, you've seen in some communities that when there was special votes, as well as today when there was the actual voting day, is that some communities have actually gone to the voting stations to actually protest around some of the candidates that they do not approve of. So the issue of voter turnout is going to be one of the crucial ones that will determine how a party wins in terms of the margin as well as the size. So that's an issue that we're going to look out for as long as the voting stations are still open. Maybe people will begin to actually flock to the stations in the final rush hour. So we don't know yet whether there's going to be a huge change or a drastic change just before the 9 o'clock cutoff. Vuyo?
One very last question. Bulelani, you were at a particular polling station, I can't remember now whether it was Ngobo earlier, where you spoke to the party agents that were there. They were telling you that at some point that particular voting station had to be closed. Apparently, there was a dispute about that arises from yesterday's special voting. Are you any clearer now about what actually happened there? And I'm asking this question because in about 47 minutes time or so, the IEC is going to have a briefing here at the National Results Center, and perhaps it's something we can seek clarity on.
Yes, you're quite correct, Vuyo. I was out in Butterworth, in a township called Umsobomvu, where actually in Ward 2 of that community, there's quite a lot of contestation in that particular ward. And you can actually quite see outside is that all the political parties are represented there because it's closely watched. But the question that you raise is around the concern that has been raised by some political parties there is that there is a dispute around the numbers of special votes that had been counted in that particular VD. And according to the UDM, which is the party that has laid the complaint, is that the numbers of the ballot papers issued compared to the numbers of the ballot papers that were found in the ballot boxes, they don't tally. Hence, they had called on the presiding officer to actually begin the recount of those special votes before the actual voting for today begins. And that VD had actually had to close in order for the political parties to recount all those ballot papers. And I'm told that that process lasted for about an hour and it was resolved. And after that, the problem was resolved because the numbers were then satisfying some of the political parties there. But then again, Vuyo, going to Tsendane a bit earlier before I went to Butterworth, as well as some of the reports that are coming out of here in East London, we're finding out that there is this concern around people who went to register in some of these VDs, but when they get there, they find that their names don't appear on the voters' roll of the VDs that they registered in. Instead, their names would appear in some instances in VDs that are adjacent to those VDs. So that was a concern, but most people were actually quite willing to actually go to those VDs that are adjacent, but there's still that principal concern is that how can I register in this particular VD and my name does not appear here and appears in another VD? Is this, the question they ask, is this not a form of manipulating these particular elections? Vuyo?
Bulelani Phillip, who is of course based at the Provincial Election Results Center in East London.